Good. Good morning, everyone. I think we're just letting a few people coming in, and we'll get started here momentarily. See some good friends on here as well. Thank you so much for being here today. All right, we have 71 participants in the room. I have here at 1 minute past. Let's go ahead and get started. I think there will be a lot more people joining shortly today. We have over 300 RSVP on this call. People are super excited about this topic. This is a 2.0 on our SBIR discussion. So thank you so much for your interest and being here today. Hi, everyone. I'm Linh Hoang, CEO of the Outpost, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's webinar, SBIR Reauthorization 2025, the INNOVATE Act, What's Changing, What's Missing, and What's Next. Whether you're a startup founder, a VC, a policy nerd, or just someone trying to make sense of federal funding, you're in the right place. We got a power-packed 60 minutes ahead. And a quick note on the format, you'll hear from two incredible panelists. They'll open it up for Q&A as well, so feel free to drop your question at any time into the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So for context, this isn't just another policy update. Between the SBIR 2025 reauthorization that's out on the table and Senator Joni Ernst's INNOVATE Act, we want to do a deep dive into what's changing, what's missing, and what's next for how America's fund innovation. The stakes are really high, and what we're discussing today, especially on national security and defense acquisition reform. So not just for a startup trying to survive the valley of death, but for our entire industrial base and our ability to compete globally. Our guests today are two of the most thoughtful voices on this topic. Warren Katz, an entrepreneur, an investor, longtime advocate of SBIR modernization, or I like to call it the OG of SBIR modernization. And he's also former managing director at Techstars. We also have Eric Blatt, partner at Scale, practice lead for dual use and defense tech, an expert in IP and government contracts, specializing in SBIR data rights and policy. With that, let's get to it. I'd love to invite Warren to provide his remarks and especially context where we have been and where we're going. Warren, over to you, sir.
Lynn, thanks very much for having us. Eric and I are delighted to be here. It's very, very exciting times with not only the INNOVATE Act with reauthorization of the SBIR program, but the Forged Act from Senator Wicker, which really foot stomps on the whole commercial item preference thing, and the two new executive orders that everybody's probably seen come out in April from the White House. Again, foot stomping pretty hard on the preference for commercial items and buying stuff from commercial product companies. Just a little bit of background how we got here, or at least I got here. I'm an entrepreneur myself, founder of a software company called Mock Technologies, built entirely on SBIRs. This is from 1990 to 2006, where I had my exit. We came out with our first, bid our first SBIRs in 1990. When they used to come out in a big phone book, you actually had to read a physical book and highlight it with magic markers and whatever, and decide what topics you wanted to bid on. Built an entire product line in SBIR, started selling my commercial off-the-shelf software products in the early 90s, at which point I discovered when trying to sell my products, finished, perfectly operating products, tried to sell them to defense primes and large government programs, I found that they were uninterested in buying commercial off-the-shelf products, despite the fact that the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act, FASA, came out in 1994, mandating the preference for commercial items. It was completely ignored at that time. Nobody really cared. And what I discovered very quickly was that the incentive structures for program managers, contracting officers, PEOs, and their prime contractors were all wrapped around doing hourly cost plus fixed fee labor contracts. The make-buy decision was skewed massively in favor of make, not buy. So even though the law said you must buy whenever possible, stretch yourself to find those commercial items that are close enough. Ask the warfighter if it's okay if there are a few features missing. Ask the vendor if they'd be willing to put in those few missing features if they're a must-have. Despite all of these exhortations to go find the commercial item, the DoD, both the acquisition professionals in the government as well as their prime contractors had no interest because they were paid to remake stuff by the hour. So I discovered this. This is 30 some odd years ago, and at that point became a zealot for the commercial item preference. Didn't have much success in the mid 90s to early 2000s. Wound up having a decent exit with my company. Worked for the new owners for some number of years. Retired. Became an angel investor in the dual use ecosystem, at the time still heavily promoting the SBIR program. It was a great way to avoid giving away equity in your company to venture capitalists or supplementing venture capital and reducing the amount of equity that you had to give away. Did that for about 5 years, at which point in the 2016, 2017 timeframe, that's when AFWERX was first starting up. It was 4 people in the basement of the Pentagon, 3 captains and Dave Harden, lieutenant colonel. And the very first thing that AFWERX wanted to do was run a startup accelerator to appeal to those commercially oriented hardware and software companies that otherwise would have no interest in working with the DoD. So they stood up the Air Force Accelerator powered by Techstars. They lured me out of retirement. I went on to run it for 3 years, and it was during that 3-year period that AFWERX was experimenting with its new version of the Air Force SBIR program, where they came out with the idea of open topics, which they themselves actually stole from NSF, National Science Foundation, and then the 15-page pitch deck instead of the 25-page proposal that they actually stole from DIU. But it was a great compendium of changes to the Air Force's SBIR program, which ultimately led them to go from a couple of hundred proposals a year to 5,000 proposals a year. And now there's 2,000 or 3,000 new companies working with the Air Force because of this lowered barrier to entry. So I was very proud to be helping those guys out during those formative first years. At the end of 2020, we all admitted that a startup accelerator was no longer necessary for the Air Force. They were a success disaster. So they asked me to form the Alliance for Commercial Technology and Government. This was in the 2021 timeframe. In order to lock in all of these beneficial changes that AFWERX came up with in Congress, so that the entire DoD SBIR program would be more amenable to commercial product companies that were trying to sell their products off the shelf just as commercial vendors. The DoD just be one more customer as opposed to having a whole other business model to do defense contracting, which no commercial product company wants to do. Nobody wants to do cost plus fixed fee contracting. It's a distasteful last resort. So we're trying to make the government our motto at the Alliance is make the US DoD the indisputable first best stop for every innovator or entrepreneur anywhere in the world. Make it more appealing and less hassle to work with the United States Department of Defense and any other possible first customer. So I'm going to stop here, introduce Eric. Eric is our executive director, also a fabulous IP attorney specializing in these very matters. He has clients who are negotiating their SBIR IP rights and patent rights and all that kind of thing. So Eric, over to you.
Thanks, Warren. I'll be brief so we can get into the bill. As Warren mentioned, I'm executive director of the Alliance for Commercial Technology and Government. Been doing that for about 1.5 years. And then more broadly, I lead a team focused on dual use technology. I'm a partner at Scale LLP. We represent somewhere between 150 to 200 dual use technology companies. It's basically 100% of what I do. And we do a range of prime contract, subcontract, teaming agreements, IP licensing, technology, portfolio, IP portfolio development, fractional general counsel, export, you name it, sort of just the set of things that this type of company needs. And the reason I got involved in the alliance is, as Warren highlighted, the Department of Defense and the federal government is very used to buying services, and there's a strong preference and momentum around sort of taking technology companies and trying to push them to become service contractors. And meanwhile, there's this innovative cluster of companies that really want to be product companies. They have a product roadmap, and they are reticent to become service contractors and sort of jettison the IP intensive business model that they're operating under. And so that tension, that friction creates a lot of tension in terms of their go-to-market and how they expand with the federal government. And basically all 150 plus of my clients were hitting the same problems over and over. And I said, okay, well, it's we can try to solve this on a one-to-one basis, but maybe we should also look at some systemic reforms. And that's how I got involved in the alliance.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Warren, for that impressive background. Let's dive right into it, Eric. We spend a lot of time on the Hill engaging with policymakers and staff. I know that, a lot of people have different versions of the bill. One of the more powerful one is the INNOVATE Act by Senator Joni Ernst. Could you provide an overview of that version and what's in it?
Yeah, absolutely. There currently, our understanding is that there are 3 versions of an SBIR reauthorization bill that are, the INNOVATE Act was the first. It was released on March 5th, I believe. There are 2 other bills that are sort of working their way through the system. We're expecting the House Small Business Committee with the Republican chair to release another bill in the next couple weeks. And we are also expecting the Democrats on both the Senate side and the House side to release a bicameral SBIR reauthorization bill from the Democratic position. The INNOVATE Act we expect it's going to be the most lean forward and also the most product company and particularly tech startup friendly of these 3 bills. And the INNOVATE Act is something that we, as the Alliance, have been working with Joni Ernst's team and the Senate Small Business Committee for a number of years. Our top priority for a number of years has been to bridge the valley of death. It's a well-known problem in this ecosystem that you can win, SBIR 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, phase 2s, get some momentum, build something really fantastic that there's a compelling warfighter need for. But then it's very hard to bridge that gap and actually scale your technology and get it used operationally on a meaningful scale. And that problem we've highlighted for a number of years, as well as others. And the INNOVATE Act is a genuine effort to try to tackle that problem directly by creating a strategic breakthrough program. So this sort of jumbo phase 2/formalized phase 3 program, we'll get into that. And then there's some other reforms to really sort of push forward. The DoD uses the SBIR program, the SBIR program as sort of the shiny front door to bring innovative tech companies in. And there's a lot of reforms in this bill to sort of further that and help bring companies in and get them to actually transition and have their technology used on an operational scale. So the Alliance has been very excited about the bill. Obviously, there's some sort of legal language in there we can sort of talk through, but at a high level, we're very excited and very supportive of the bill.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What I love to do, right, especially at the beginning, is let's talk about our wins so far, right? The Alliance has been really engaging with folks on the Hill, providing recommendations, and many of those have been adopted in the language of the bill. Warren, could you highlight some of the success to date, especially the adoption of the Alliance recommendation?
Sure. Yeah. So the Alliance, as you said, has been working with Senator Ernst, and Eric says Senator Ernst's staff for years. We worked with her staff on the 2022 reauthorization, got a few little wins in there, including open topics mandated throughout and a couple other things. But for the last 3 years, we've been working with her on what a dynamite reauthorization should look like, and they took a lot of our recommendations, which we're delighted at. The first and most important, as Eric said, is a formalized, standardized phase 3 program that bridges the valley of death. most of the listeners on the audience will be familiar with the Air Force's STRATFI program, which was an outstanding experiment by the Air Force, really worked well. Perfect bridge for the valley of death, provided a way for companies with very successful phase 2 products that had a customer on the DoD side with some cash to be able to immediately and formally go into production on their phase 2 prototype. So this is now formalized in the INNOVATE Act as Senator Ernst's Strategic Breakthrough Awards. She modeled it exactly on STRATFI, exactly like we requested. It is a program that has $30 million coming from the SBIR program, as well as $30 million coming from other sources. They loosened up the rules a little bit to make it a little more flexible. So the matching $30 million can come from a blend of end user customer money and or commercial investor money or venture capital money, which is great. They made it more flexible, but again, it's a $60 million capped contract, which immediately puts you in production. So we were over the moon when that came into the legislation, and there's a chunk of cash that's now dedicated to it. I think it's a quarter of a point of the SBIR budget, which amounts to, I think, $400 to $500 million total for the overall SBIR program. About half of that is DoD. So this creates a sustained bucket of money for these formalized STRATFIs across all of the DoD, which is phenomenal. Another fabulous win we got was a 90-day shot clock for those strategic breakthrough awards, meaning a company won't wait around for a year to get their scale up contract. It's restricted to 90 days. I hope they figure out how to enforce that, but another wonderful addition. A couple of other things that we got in there, which we're delighted at. We've always been highly critical of the fact that the SBIR program has been used as an indoctrination program into cost plus fixed fee contracting, which is exactly wrong. It's exactly the wrong thing to do. This is supposed to be treated like venture capital, so that a small business gets some seed capital to make a product and then exits the SBIR program with a fabulous product success. Yet some parts of, especially the DoD, have been treating it like a way to train up little businesses to be little defense contractors, which we have been bitterly opposed to. So this new legislation actually enforces that all phase 1s and all phase 2s shall be firm fixed price, aligning it much better with commercial product world and retraining the acquisition workforce that we really don't want anybody doing this cost plus fixed fee contracting. Again, we certainly don't want you trying to take these little commercial product companies and force a cost plus fixed fee, DCAA compliant accounting system down their throat. They're just going to walk. They're just going to walk away, which is kind of what's been happening. So we're delighted at that. Clear definition of open topics, a huge win for us, as you may know, in the 2022 reauthorization. Open topics became mandatory for all DoD agencies, but most of them cheated. And what we mean by cheated is that they simply took the word open and slapped it on their regular standard conventional topics as a way to giving the community, giving Congress the finger, essentially, if I may use that term. So this legislation puts a very strict definition around open topics to sort of squeeze out that bad behavior, which is wonderful. And then we have some legitimate curbs on cyber mills. Finally, 2022, they were so watered down, it was terrible. We barely got anything in there. But now there's some legitimate curbs on this bad behavior. We view the SBIR program like early stage high risk venture capital, with the single penultimate goal being graduation of the company. That is what the SBIR program is for. Okay, it's to create take little companies and turn them into Qualcomms, Amgens, iRobots, AeroVironments, Viasats. All the greatest wins in the SBIR program became giant, huge successes. It was never intended to have companies become little, defense contractors or little research labs that never, ever graduated. It was not the original intent of the program. Finally, Congress is coming down on this and coming down strongly on the side of if you can't commercialize at a certain point, we're going to
Mm.
cut you off, which is really, really a critical message. One of the most important, I mean, it's not just about the waste of money. It's really even more about how do you send a message to the community of companies that would like to bid or contemplating or thinking about bidding on SBIRs. If you're sending them the message that this program is rigged for the insiders and you have no chance or little chance to actually win one of these unless you were an insider, then that reality, unfortunately, has been turning away the best and brightest newcomers. If the message to the community, however, has changed to be like, if you don't commercialize something in a certain amount of time, we throw you out, we cut you off, okay? That's a very powerful message to a newcomer that says, ah, I actually have a legitimate chance at this because it's not rigged for the insiders anymore. They flush everybody out, refresh everybody once in a while, and I'm coming along, I'm the newcomer. And I'll also give a huge shout out to Senator Ernst's team for their very clever 1A program. The legislation has this new feature that some of the money is set aside for phase ones for companies who've never ever done business with the government, never won an SBIR before, which is phenomenal. It's a great new introductory, and companies looking at that will say, ah, this obviously can't be rigged because it's only for one time, first time new entrants, and therefore I have a very, very good shot at this. So we didn't come up with that idea, but when we saw it, we were like, wow, that's very, very clever. So I'm going to stop here, allow you to jump into the next.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. So just quick summary, guys. A lot of wins here. Formalized phase 3, 1A, so lower barrier to entry, lots of guardrails, firm fixed price, and obviously transition as well. Super important. So as you can see, organizing matters, right? So make sure to join the alliance, join the innovation ecosystem, get the words out, mobilize, and fight for the ecosystem. Obviously, with Congress, they will always argue and argue. There are a lot of wins here. Warren, from your perspective, what are the parts that Congress will argue over?
Well, the obvious one will be about the curbs on cyber mills. There are some congressmen who have been unfortunately staunch defenders of cyber mills, which I find inexplicable. The argument is that these companies we should award solely purely on merit. But the true measure of merit for the SBIR program is graduation. The true winners out of the SBIR program, the most productive, prolific success stories, are the ones who are no longer eligible. And that's at the core, the heart of it, that is the goal of the program. So if I had conversations with companies that have won hundreds of millions of dollars of SBIRs, yet never graduate and never produce commercial products, and I'm puzzled as to how they can ever win the nth phase 2 for something where there's almost a surety that it will wind up with no results, with nothing, no commercial product. It's important to understand that research, the end result of research is a product. It's a widget, a weapon, a piece of software. It's an incarnation of the research results to provide usefulness and benefit and financial gain. There's only one kind of research in the government where the knowledge itself is the end product, and that's astronomy, okay? When you're looking at stars and planets and, and nebula and things like that, then yes, the knowledge itself is the end product. Everything else has to wind up in a physical incarnation or a product of some kind. Otherwise, it's a waste of money. And it's actually worse than a waste of money, because if your currency in kind is just published research papers and patents, but nothing ever gets into the hands of an end user, you've not only wasted the money, but you've published the results and handed it to our adversaries, okay? Without our own people, our own warfighters having the benefit of the invention, okay? So it's worse than wasting of the money. It's providing our adversaries with free IP for them to go make the incarnation, which they do, okay? So it's kind of critically important that Congress come to the realization that this can't be viewed as just a research program where research itself is the end result that we want. It's not. It's the products, the financial gain, the graduation of the companies, the financial success, and their exit, which is unfortunately the argument there. So that's the number one argument they're going to have, I believe. And then, of course, the percentage as going from 3.2 to something higher, I do believe that everybody's going to be talking about. We're very, very strong proponents of increasing that 3.2% to something a lot higher. I know that the Democrats have been throwing around a number like 7%, which we're delighted at. That would be amazing. And of course, obviously, the universities and government laboratories will be upset about this because some of their money will be allocated away from them to commercially oriented product-based startup companies. But this is a very good thing. It's a very healthy thing. There's some percentage of basic research money that should go to universities and labs to create very basic science, but a goodly chunk should go to applied research and the productization piece. And 3.2% out of 100% is kind of minuscule. If you ask me what the right number is, 25 to 33%. That's the right number. Okay, something like that. 2/3 basic research to university and labs, 1/3 to startup companies that are actually going to commercialize, productize, and deploy it. That feels right to me. I'm going to stop here, and those are the
Thank
big
you,
big
Warren.
arguments I think Congress can have.
Here. Eric, did you want to add any additional colors on that, especially when it comes to sustain R&D funding? There's so many different versions out there. We heard 3.2. Any additional thoughts on that between the various bills?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know where this is going to land. My inference is that the Ernst team that put together the INNOVATE Act, they wanted to create a sort of a formal phase 3 program to support, this to tackle this value of death problem. How to fund it was a tough question because obviously Ernst is interested and the Republicans generally are interested in being judicious stewards of taxpayer resources. We strongly support an increase in the allocation. The Ernst team said, how do we fund this? And they wound up deciding, hey, I don't think we have the support in Congress to sort of increase the proportion of the overall budget that goes to the SBIR program. So instead, we'll create the funding for the strategic breakthrough program within the funds that we control. So we'll take a little bit of money out of the STTR program and use that to fund the strategic breakthrough program. Which, I mean, if obviously we would love to have the budget increase for the SBIR program. But if that's not a possibility, and hopefully it will be, right? We're expecting some of the other bills to actually increase that allocation. But from Ernst's perspective, if the decision is, hey, we've got 3.6% or whatever it is, once you add the SBIR program and the STTR program, how do we spend that the best possible way we can? I think that is a reasonable decision to say, hey, the STTR, there's a lot of problems in phase 2s. Universities are often difficult to work with. There's IP issues, there's performance issues. So maybe what we could do is we could take a little bit of that money that's not optimally spent and spend it on the strategic breakthrough program, where we think we're going to get a whole lot of bang for our buck because we're going to see companies push through from phase 2 to actual scaling and operational deployment. So I think that is a much better use of funds, and we support it. Obviously, we'd love the pie to increase as well, but we'll see.
Yep, certainly. And that's what is needed, is mobilizing, organizing so that we can fight for the ecosystem. Eric, from your standpoint, between the various bills here, what are the risks here on the table for small businesses, and what are company doing to prepare for some of those risks?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities here for dual use tech startups to, it's going to probably be a little bit easier for them to get into the program, a little bit easier for them to win contracts. There's the breakthrough program. It's going to be a big opportunity. There is, of course, I mean, on the other side of the ledger, Congress, and we saw in the 2022 reauthorization, Congress was interested in heightening scrutiny of any foreign ties, particularly technology transfer. And that was sort of the scrutiny was heightened in 2022. And at least in the INNOVATE Act, it's going to be bumped up once again, at least in the current version of the bill text. I think that to some extent, that's just a political reality, right? If you're a member of Congress, there's very little that Republicans and Democrats agree on legislatively. One thing they agree on is that we have to be tough on China specifically. And so if a legislator can throw some language in their bill that's tough on China, they're kind of going to do that right now. I do think, I mean, in terms of the foreign risk assessment, there are some meaningful additional encumbrances, and our position is those encumbrances are not advisable. From our perspective, the SBIR program should be the shiny front door. It should be the very best commercial technology, cybersecurity, space technology, AI, aerospace, whatever it is, deep tech. We want those founders to come in and look, hey, how can I work with the DoD? There's this great program. I want to get involved. And any sort of ties on that, hey, but if we do get involved, what is the government going to ask for in return? And certain things are reasonable. Like, hey, we're going to have to deliver some reports, some prototypes. That stuff is all expected. But then when you start to say, hey, the DoD wants to restrict our ability to do business with, companies in Europe or other parts of the world, and they want to monitor that, and adding these additional entanglements and risks is going to make it a little bit harder for the program to serve its intended purpose of bringing companies into the fold. And unfortunately, there is a little bit of that here. So there's ideas like, hey, if you do within a period of 5 years after your contract comes in, if you do a foreign technology licensing, there's an exception for NATO companies and other NATO countries and other allies. But if you do a technology transfer with a country that is not a U.S. ally, then there's a potential that maybe the funds under your SBIR award could potentially be clawed back and the government could knock on your door. Again, we oppose that. Our view is that there are existing laws that apply to companies that are looking to do foreign deals. There's CFIUS, which controls foreign investment in companies. There's ITAR, EAR, export controls. There's classified information, controlled unclassified information. There's all sorts of controls on that. And those apply to companies, U.S. defense contractors generally. And we think those should be the rules that apply to SBIR awardees. You shouldn't have heightened additional burdens on these companies. But nonetheless, it is entirely possible there may be some additional strictures placed on companies through the program. So what I would say is, keep an eye on it. We're going to be advocating for those strictures to be loosened at least a little bit, and to try to make the playing field for SBIR awardees basically the same playing field that any defense contractor has. If we do see some additional controls placed on foreign transactions, I would just encourage companies to before you do a technology licensing deal or other types of technology contracts with foreign companies, engage counsel, talk through whether there are strings attached. And I would always encourage companies, if you're raising money in the next 6 months or whatever it's going to be, I always encourage companies to make sure that if you are interested in being working with the DoD long term, just make sure you're diligencing your investors and make sure you understand where the money's coming from, and just make sure that there's not going to be problems moving forward.
Yep. Now, thank you for elaborating on that. Lots of opportunities, but we're observing a few risks as well. Cap table risk, clawback on foreign influence, ITAR. We'll continue to monitor that. Thank you, Eric, for elaborating. At this time, please go ahead and add your questions into the Q&A function. We'll get to them shortly. Back over to Warren, what are some of the next steps, especially on the legislative timeline with the INNOVATE Act in its current form? What do you see the chance of that pass through both Congress and get signed by the president? What are your thoughts and your take on its passing before year end?
So the SBIR program is authorized up until September 30th. And like last time, it'll get signed on September 30th for October 1st. The chances are very good. It's a very, very popular program in Congress. The real question is the brinksmanship of negotiation to the last day. Who's going to hold out for whatever little pieces that they absolutely don't want to negotiate away. As Eric mentioned earlier, there's going to be 3 different SBIR reauthorization pieces of legislation that are going to be considered. Senator Ernst and her team on the Senate side came out with theirs first. We understand there's going to be a Democratic proposal from both the House and Senate combined, their proposal. And then the House Small Business Committee is also going to come out with their proposals. And then they have to go into conference and horse trade amongst these 3 variants. We're extremely bullish on the INNOVATE Act. We like that one. We haven't seen the other two, but we can't imagine the other two being any better than this. This is probably one of the best reauthorization packages for the SBIR, certainly the best I've ever seen in my 30 years of watching over the program. So we're extremely optimistic that somehow, some way, a very good package, and considering the Republicans are control both sides of Congress, we're pretty optimistic that the INNOVATE Act will wind up mostly being approved intact or with most of the stuff in it, which we're delighted at. So if I could, as a call to action for any listeners on this phone call, it does really matter if your congressional representatives hear from you. Okay, the Alliance as an industry association, we have 70 members, I believe. Anybody in this phone call who's not a member of the Alliance should be a member of the Alliance. You should immediately go to our website and join right now. It's the most important thing you can possibly do. But if you don't do that, I would strongly recommend, especially if your local representatives are on either the House or Senate Small Business Committee, either side, a Democrat or Republican, or the House or Senate Armed Services Committees, either side, House or Republican. Put in the effort, go find out if any of your representatives are on there, and send them a note. Find out from their office who the military legislative affairs staffer is, defense staffer, who's in charge of this sort of thing, or small business staffer, and schedule a meeting. Go ahead. They're supposed to meet with you, their constituent, and voice your opinion. And be very candid and blunt about everything that you like and everything that you don't like. Support some things. At the present time, I would not recommend anybody try to add any new stuff, because there's so much new stuff on the table right now. But simply voicing your opinion about what you really support and what you don't is very, very valuable to us. It will help quite a bit in the negotiation. So that's the next step. And we have 6 months left before September 30th, 5 months left, something like that. So we have a little bit of time, tons of ideas on the table, but your opinion matters. Okay? So be a squeaky wheel, put in the effort, call your representative, have a meeting, or at least send an email, and very, very succinctly, very short, support what you support, and denigrate what you don't support.
Thank you for that. This is definitely a must-sign, must-pass legislation. Everyone's going to be leaning in and making sure that we're calling our members of Congress, letting them know innovation is important to the country. Obviously, lots of executive orders are flying left and right. Warren, what's your takeaway on the recent executive order from the president? I think there's a section in there, 5.5A. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, so just for everybody's listening edification, the Alliance has been doing a lot of other things besides just SBIR reauthorization. The even more important issue that is essentially the whole, one of the primary reasons for the existence of our organization is the enforcement of the commercial item preference. And to give you a review, I mentioned this earlier. In 1994, Congress passed a law called the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act, which mandated that acquisition professionals are supposed to go shopping for commercial items first before they kick off a developmental program to replicate it. Despite the fact that this has been on the books since 1994, it was completely laughed off by the acquisition community and the DoD, forcing Palantir to actually sue the Army in 2017 regarding the direct violation. Palantir had a finished product they was selling off the shelf. The Army went ahead and put out knowing full well there was a commercial item, the Army went ahead and put out an RFP for a procurement program to duplicate the whole thing. Palantir sued, cost them a lot of money, but they won because the Army was definitely very much in the wrong. But this practice has been flagrant for 30 plus years simply because there's never been any enforcement. As I mentioned earlier, the incentive structures for acquisition professionals is to run an extremely high budget, extremely long duration development program because it enhances their career goals. They have more power, gravitas, higher budget, more influence, job security. And if the program never delivers to the warfighter while they're in charge of it, so much the better, because they can't get blamed for its failure. Well, so the first thing that had to change was the incentive structure around government program managers to actually reward them for finding commercial items that were close enough and buying them quickly and getting the procurement finished as fast as possible. And unfortunately, there has never been any incentive structure change or even the ask until the executive order of April 9th that came out from the White House, Section 5A, is the first time I've ever seen in writing, and maybe there's something in the Forged Act. I think there might be something in the Forged Act also. There is something in the Forged Act, but these are the things that are actually going to change behavior. So with the Section 5A of the executive order from April 9th, as well as that section of the Forged Act, which requires the DoD to change the incentive structure, the personal career and strength incentive structures. I don't care whether it's bonuses or raises or promotions or gold stars or award ceremonies, whatever it is, whatever that bundle of rewards is, it has to reward the finding of a close enough commercial item and finishing the delivery to the warfighter much faster than predicted, much faster than scheduled, faster than the last time, at a lower budget than the last time or what was currently budgeted. This is critical to actually changing behavior, because simply putting it in a law again that ye shall do this will wind up being ignored, just like FASA was for the last 30 years. So this was critical, both the Forged Act as well as the executive order. The one last piece that we're pushing for here at the Alliance is an enforcement mechanism. You have to have both carrots and sticks. So we're heavily pushing on an additional enforcement mechanism, which resembles a waste, fraud, and abuse system, where a vendor who believes that their commercial item was overlooked or bypassed in favor of a developmental program can actually have a place they can go, an independent third-party place they can go, whether it's the commercial item group at DCMAO or DIU, some place that can adjudicate whether it was appropriate for the procurement command to actually bypass the commercial item and start a developmental program. So those two pieces are necessary. So it looks like we got the incentives to be in two places, the executive order and the Forged Act. Forged Act, by the way, everybody should absolutely read it. It's been phenomenal piece of legislation. I certainly hope most of it gets into the NDAA, and we're heavily involved in that. And that executive order from the White House, both of them, the one from April 9th and April 15th, phenomenal for pushing on this commercial item preference to finally convert the DoD from let's make it from scratch every time, let's duplicate every SBIR Phase 2 prototype with a large defense contractor and just steal their IP, converting from that attitude to an attitude where the program managers are hell-bent on finding the commercial item and really undesirous of ever getting involved with a developmental program. That is our goal, and it's working very well.
Awesome. Thank you. Now we turn it over to you guys. We have 15 minutes here to go through all of your questions. I'm hoping that we'll be able to allow you guys to ask questions directly, but I'm going to go through and read some of the questions in the Q&A channel here, specifically on the strategic breakthrough programs. Maybe Eric or Warren can elaborate on this one. How many startups could potentially be funded on the annual basis through the DoD and strategic breakthrough program? Do you guys have that information?
So it is hard to tell. One of the things I'll observe is that the Air Force just did it themselves out of their own budget. They decided for themselves to take a couple of $100 million a year out of their regular SBIR budget and dedicate it to StratFi. So there will be no restriction on the Army or the Navy electively taking some of their money and doing the same sort of thing with it. In fact, the Army did this with the Catalyst program. I think they were. I'm pleased that the Army was trying something new, though the Catalyst program had some defects with it, which I've been pretty vocal about. But they were able to do it. So this extra chunk of money that Congress is now setting aside solely for this strategic breakthrough awards can be added to whatever percentage of money that each agency would like to take out of their regular SBIR funding. There's no limit to it. I also know the agencies have been very happy about this. And the reason why is because they feel like they're being way overloaded and overworked with too many phase ones and phase twos. And they would actually like the opportunity to award larger contracts to their true winners to get them into production. This is a very good thing. It saves them some work and allows them to truly promote their winners into production. So there's not going to be any resistance here from the services to do this. So if you take a number like for the DoD, if it's 250 million bucks, you divide it by, I don't know, 12 million bucks each. What is that? Another 20 additional, contracts a year at the $12.5 million level has to be matched by external money. So I'm going to guess it's going to be in the several dozen a year. But the Air Force itself does, I think, 2 dozen StratFis a year. So, there's not going to be, I would predict the number to be between 50 and 100 of these a year. That'd be my prediction. Eric, what do you think?
I think that's about right. Yeah, I mean, if you say it's 200, 250 million a year, depending exactly what it comes out. I would also say they're likely going to be 4-year contracts. So if there's $20 million of SBIR funds being allocated with 20 million of matching, you would break that 20 over 4 years, so it comes out to about 5 per year. So basically take maybe 250 divided by 5-ish. That's probably about the number you'll see.
Great, awesome. Let's talk about CRs. There's some questions here. Can you expound on phase 3 aspect of the new legislation in the INNOVATE Act? How might CRs impact the progress of the passage?
Eric, you have any thoughts on that?
So the CR that's currently in effect, which I believe goes through the end of this fiscal year, Warren, Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong about that. It does allow new starts. No one likes a CR. It's not optimal. Hopefully we'll see a budget to. I don't think the CR is going to be the big blocker because we do have the ability to have new starts. Obviously, it's not optimal though.
Cool.
That's the key. New starts is the key because phase 3s would still be able to start, right?
That's right. The next one here, maybe for Warren, thanks for the overview. As you know, deep tech many times need more capital than a single SBIR phase 2. How is the language written against SBIR mills that would still allow multiple phase 2 towards graduation? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the 2 limits right now, one is a $75 million lifetime cap. And for any venture-backed company, you realize that you're never alone. There's no one investor that gives you all of your money. If you think about all of the, if your company is co-funded by SBIR and venture rounds, $75 million from one investor might correlate to $200, $300, $400 million of investment money to get your nuclear reactor, hypersonic missile, whatever it is that's a little more expensive than an app than a cell phone app. So $75 million as far as a cap is pretty high. It's kind of high. So it's this when contributing to other money, this should not be a real barrier for a true company that really does want to get out of the SBIR program as quickly as possible. I did an analysis of the top winners, the most successful companies out of the SBIR program of all time. I took the top 20 as measured by gross revenue obtained outside the SBIR program divided by the amount of SBIR money they took, okay? For the top 20 companies that were the most prolific, the most successful SBIR companies, they took on average $7.2 million on average, okay? So you think a $75 million cap is pretty high considering that the top 20 performers of the SBIR program only took on average 7.2. The highest number from any of those top 20 companies was $27 million. I think that was AeroVironment, if I'm recalling correctly. So that cap is perfectly fine. The other cap is after 25 phase 2 SBIRs, the company must demonstrate that they are making more money outside of the SBIR program than inside the SBIR program, than they took from SBIRs, which means that once 25 phase twos translates to about $50 million these days. And what that is saying is that your company must have made or earned more than $50 million of revenue from all other sources combined as compared to the SBIR program, so a one-to-one match. Also quite reasonable. If I'm taking $25 million from one investor and I can't get the entire rest of the world to give me another $25 million, what does that say about my company and my IP and my actual attempts to graduate? Okay, it's quite pathetic. Okay, if you can't generate a one-to-one of all other revenue combined, all other sources of money combined compared to SBIR money. SBIR should not be the #1 revenue source for any company ever. Okay, it's investment money, and you should be looking to exit and looking to get other customers as quickly as possible. 25 phase twos, you kind of should be getting more money from the entire rest of the world combined.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think there's an opportunity here to clarify the purpose of the 1A program. This is a question from Dylan. All right. As Warren mentioned, lower the barrier to entry, get a foot in the door is super important. But there's really a complaint in the ecosystem that there's not enough money to actually do R&D. And so, especially right now with Air Force Open Topic Phase 1 is $75K to just find an Air Force customer. Could you elaborate on that? I think this is a new innovation in the INNOVATE Act for that 1A to get in the door. Warren or Eric, do you want to take that and address it for Dylan?
Sure, I can take a crack at it. I think most likely if you're in this audience, chances are good the 1A program is not for you, right? It's for folks who are, super early stage, don't know much about the SBIR program, heard about this, and are excited about. I mean, it's true that 40 grand is not enough to do any meaningful R&D, but it is also true that there's a whole lot of folks that are, finishing their, college or grad school programs, and they get a check for 5 grand because they won a pitch competition. They're really excited about that 5 grand, right? That's enough for them to get off and going. So you're right. It's not a lot. You can't do much with 40 grand, but it's really about folks who are not at the level where they can really compete with, larger companies who have more momentum, and just sort of setting aside a small amount of money for people to get their first contract and then scale up and get real phase 1s and phase 2s from there.
Cool. There's a question here from Brendan. The NDAA for fiscal 19 introduced an incentive requirement for all DoD contracts exceeding 100 million to consider the integration of SBIR technologies. Is there any discussion about making that language stronger or more than a pilot?
I do remember seeing that language. I usually am pretty dubious about suggestions like this. The only real thing that's going to move the needle is that the incentive structure thing from the 5A, from the executive order, from the Forged Act. If somebody somewhere in the ecosystem is strongly rewarded for finding a commercial item or a SBIR phase 2 product, and they're awarded above and beyond what they're rewarded for if they have a custom development project to duplicate it, then it'll happen. Okay, unless the carrots and sticks are there in the right place, then it'll happen. Otherwise, it will not happen. Okay, it's just the way it is. I'm usually pretty negative on these sort of suggested "ye shall try hard" and "please be nice" and "why don't you do this so we help you help." No, none of that works. You need to have a big pile of carrots or a pot of gold in in front of somebody to do the right thing, and then they will do it. Okay, incentives. I mean, one of my favorite quotes. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, is oft heard. He's passed away, but one of his famous sayings was, "Show me the incentives, and I'll show you the outcome." Period. Full stop. And when it's a conflict between what somebody is directed to do and what somebody is rewarded for doing, the reward structure will always prevail over the directive, which is why FASA has failed. So I'm pretty negative on these, nicety sort of, pieces of legislation. I'm very bullish on the ones that put pots of gold in the right place and put a gun to the head in the wrong place.
There's a question here on TABA. Is it being addressed in the INNOVATE Act? Eric, what's the future of TABA in the INNOVATE Act?
I could be wrong. I did read through the bill. I didn't see any changes to the TABA program, but I could be wrong about that, so please don't quote me.
Yep, we'll take a look into it. That's a really valuable tool for a lot of companies. Let's see. Does the INNOVATE Act focus more on DoD, or does it need to apply to other agencies as well?
So the Strategic Breakthrough Program is a DoD only reform. That's the spot where that fix was needed. The other big item is the push to commercial style firm fixed price contracts, where you don't have to keep your time and bill for hours. You just deliver what you said you were going to deliver, and you get paid the amount that the contract says you're going to pay. That applies more broadly than the DoD, but it only applies to contracting agencies. So, for example, NASA is an example of another contracting agency. The grants are still going to be run like grants, where you have to track your time.
I'll also add that one of the most successful SBIR programs in the federal government was the National Science Foundation, NSF. And they had their own self-imposed restriction on no company shall ever be awarded more than 2 phase 2 SBIRs ever in the lifetime from NSF. And also, because they're not a customer, they're not using any of the end products, their sole mission was commercialization. Because of the purity of their approach, they actually wound up creating some of the best practices and the best habits around bidding, awarding, helping companies. And the INNOVATE Act is kind of forcing the DoD, and AFWERX did it voluntarily. AFWERX stole a lot of stuff from the NSF for this exact reason. But the rest of this legislation is saying, you know what, these habits, this attitude, these restrictions seem to be very productive and working well and create better results. So let's force it upon the DoD.
Great. I'll take over maybe one final questions before we close out. This is about prediction, not just only importantly passing the legislation this year, but Warren, big pictures, what is your prediction? What do you think SBIR program will look like in 5 years?
I'm hoping it does look more like a venture capital fund. It keeps going the direction of AFWERX. The phase 3 is wind up being really solidified. DIU winds up blending their activities with SBIR, and they start to be indistinguishable. This is a great thing. DIU had some great habits, only buying commercial items, finished stuff, having 5 competitors at the same time with similar interchangeable items. Having the phase 3 be more formalized. This is all really great stuff, accelerating innovations out of the hands of the newest, hottest startup companies right into the hands of the warfighter, shrinking that time, that delta T, to the smallest possible time. So this is and the commercial item preference as this outside influence will really accelerate this, because if the Forged Act passes, the executive orders get obeyed, and commercial items finally get preeminence and are finally actually sought out and preferred first, then the SBIR phase 2 products are all considered commercial items. That'll be a massive accelerant to the pull of SBIR phase 2 products from the procurement side across the valley of death. So I'm very excited about that as an external factor, which will really light the SBIR program on fire.
That's awesome. When that happens, we'll bring you back, Warren, to talk about the progress to date. Thank you, Warren and Eric, for your time today, for explaining the different versions of the bills, what's out there, and most importantly, our combined success together. And that's about action, activism, and organizing, right? All of the work that everyone does in this ecosystem really matters. So the call to action for everyone is continue to engage with your members of Congress to support the INNOVATE Act that's out there. That is our best legislation to date, and that is a must pass before the end of the year. So we're asking everyone to be part of the dialogue and engage with your members of Congress to get that legislation passed. And also join the Alliance. This is about joining, being part of the ecosystem and supporting innovation and move the needles for everyone. That is our ask. And so more to come. The work, we still have 6 months left to get this legislation passed. We're going to keep you posted. We're going to continue to engage with member of Congress through the Alliance, and we're asking you to join, and so that we all can, continue to push for innovation in the industrial base here. So thank you so much. Thank you for being part of this conversation, and see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Lynn. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.